We are really happy to have you at the International IVF meeting. I think we are ready to show our first video. And remember, here we go.
IVF and modern computing both have very similar histories. Here we can see the birth of Louise Brown in 1978 and Apple's first computer, the Apple I, in 1976. About 15 years later, we have the next revolution in both computing history and IVF, with the introduction of intracytoplasmic sperm injection around 1992 and the internet in 1994.
Imagine a world where every word ever written, every picture ever painted and every film ever shot could be viewed instantly in your home via an information superhighway, a high-capacity digital communications network.
The fertility community embraced the internet from very early on. This last slide shows how assisted reproductive technology and the internet and modern computing have all developed hand in hand over the last few years. And we certainly expect this close collaboration to continue into the future as we explore things like robots, artificial intelligence, and automation in IVF.
Okay, so I am now Serena Chen. I am co-hosting with Tracey Bambrough. And for those of you who don't know Tracey, Tracey and Sarah Marshall Page are two IVF moms that started this phenomenal website resource called ivfbabble.com. And if you haven't been there, please go. They are going global. They started in the UK and now are an incredible resource of very wonderful information and a community, support, education, awareness, and advocacy for the infertility community across the globe. They are helping improve access. And now that you guys are all here joining the Pineapple Warriors session, you can be an official Pineapple Warrior by going to ivfbabble.com and getting yourself a Pineapple Warrior pin to help support their mission of raising awareness and improving access.
Thank you so much, Serena. It's great to be hosting this session with you. And let me tell you about my co-host. So this is the incredible Serena H. Chen, who serves as Director of Reproductive Medicine at St. Barnabas Medical Center and IRMS, the Institute for Reproductive Medicine and Science in New Jersey, and Clinical Associate Professor at both Rogers Medical Schools. But she is a powerhouse, an amazing woman, full of useful tips and programs on Twitter, Instagram, to say the very least. And she is the inspiration behind this whole session on social media, as is our panelist, the wonderful Giles Palmer.
Okay, thank you so much, Tracey. Also, besides Tracey and I and Giles, we're joined on the panel with i3's co-founder and technical genius and the man behind IVF.net and IVF Store, Thomas Elliott. He put together that nice video for us. He established the reproductive science resource website, IVF.net back in 1997, when you can see the internet was just in its infancy. And at the same time, with Dr. Kay Elder, pioneered online meetings, which was really radical at the time, even though everybody's online now. Back then, as you can see, it seemed like something crazy. We are also joined by our expert on marketing promotion from the company Vaquera, Mr. Chris Kincade. Chris has launched a number of media and technology businesses. He is a publishing and brand strategist, and he and Vaquera have done incredible work for companies like Samsung, Jaunt VR, Rebecca Minkoff, and more. He's also been a screenwriter, journalist, and film and TV analyst. And we have another wonderful little video for you from UK Twitter and part-time world famous andrologist, Alan Pacey.
Hello there, my name's Alan Pacey. and I work at the University of Sheffield, and I'm a serious scientist. You can tell that from all of my books and my certificates. I've been on social media for about 10 years now, and I really do think that it's a force for good. It allows me a direct route to communicate with my stakeholders, be that other academics, doctors, or patients. Social media is a force for good.
Implantation and the 2-week wait. How to know if you could be pregnant as early as possible. Hi friends, I'm talking about implantation and how soon can you know if you're pregnant and what are the signs. I am Natalie Crawford, MD. I am a fertility physician in Austin, Texas, and this channel exists to provide you fertility facts and education so you can be empowered about your reproductive health.
Infertility does not define you. You've got this.
Are you undergoing fertility treatment? Should you get the COVID vaccine? ASRM just now came out with a recommendation saying that if you qualify for the vaccine, you should get it, even if you're undergoing fertility treatments, even if you are trying to get pregnant. If you're already pregnant, you should talk to your doctor.
Hi, Tuesday, Instagram Live, Male Factor Infertility. Dr. Natalie Sikliniak and Dr. John Garrissey will tell you everything you need to know. Get your questions ready. See you soon. Bye.
This is Jennifer J. Palumbo. I want to talk to you very briefly about egg freezing. Egg freezing has been around for a while, but it wasn't until 2012, which is the year I had my first son, that they removed the experimental label.
Clomid for men? HCG shots to help with fertility and sperm count? Shouldn't guys take testosterone for that stuff? No. Testosterone actually lowers sperm counts, but Clomid and HCG can improve sperm production in some people.
Toxic person, walk the other way. Walk the other way. See that toxic person? We're walking the other way. See that toxic person? And we're walking the other way.
I take it all back. I take it all back.
So, what do you think of social media? Are you like Alan Pacey running, screaming out of the room? Those were some of our panelists doing some videos. Our next speaker, I'm very excited about, Lowell T. Koo. He is an award-winning provider of infertility treatments in Texas. He's been top doctor in Texas multiple times, and he's a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist and the brand new chairman of the ASRM Tech Committee. And his patients call him Dr. Knocked Up, and that's where you can find him on Instagram. Welcome, Lowell Koo. So nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Serena. Today I've recorded my presentation to help keep things moving along. So without further ado, let's go and get started with the tape. Today we're going to talk about modernizing infertility medicine. I have no disclosures and because I have no conflicts of interest. So first we're going to talk about technology. Do you think that technology is hurting or helping your practice? Some people might think it's helping. Some people might think it's hurting. But today we're going to figure out whether it can help or hurt your practice. So the technology of communications and the fertility practice is really, really important. And there's an article that was published. There's a very good sentence in there that really caught my eye. And I really want to kind of dive into this sentence. And it starts with, information exchange has accelerated at an uneven pace, which has led to problems meeting needs and expectations, which has contributed to the need to form connected communities of patients who have both equalized and imbalanced competitive advantages and disadvantages between large and small fertility practice groups. So let's focus on this sentence. Let's talk about the first part. information exchange, it has indeed accelerated at an uneven pace. And let's go over that in detail. Smartphones were invented in 1992 by IBM. And since then till now in 2020 to 2021, in the US, the smartphone penetration is estimated at 98%. So that means about 98% of all US citizens carry and use a smartphone. And the smartphone has really overcome the desktop as the #1 way that people can access the internet and access information. So the mobile phone or the cellular phone really is the #1 tool that really people, especially our patients, are using to access information about us, about our practice, about infertility, and about education about infertility. Here in the smartphone market analysis done here, what we see is that the younger age population, ages 18 to 44, really over 90 to 98% of those types of age populations are utilizing smartphones. So these young patients that we see, and this is our age demographic, they truly are using the cell phone. And more women than men use the cell phone to access information and access the internet. So thus, the cell phone really is the powerful tool, and we've really got to be able to understand how to utilize the cell phone to be able to communicate and connect with our patients. So let's go into the next part of the sentence. Problems meeting needs and expectations, which has contributed to the need to form community. So these expectations that patients have, unfortunately, are starting to become unmet. You know, our prospective and current patients really want and expect answers. They expect them immediately, and the faster that we can respond to them, the better. And practices are reporting challenges with meeting patient expectations. Technology has raised expectations of response times to a standard that staff simply cannot meet. Dedicated personnel to triage and answer patient calls, emails, and texts is probably what we need to really be focusing on. Your practice may need to hire extra personnel in order to handle the quick turnaround response that patients expect. You can utilize technologies to try to minimize the dedicated personnel, the number of dedicated personnel that are needed. For example, you can create an FAQ or frequently asked questions web page on your home site. You can actually put videos on YouTube to see if you can answer frequently asked questions. You can maybe even try to add artificial intelligence to your websites, like chatbots that can help answer questions through artificial intelligence before they need to call a nurse or the physician. So let's go to the third part of the sentence. Connected communities of patients who both have equalized and imbalanced the competitive advantages. So basically, when patients cannot get enough answers at a quick enough pace, they will turn to each other for support, for advice, and for answers to their questions. And that's totally understandable. So with the information exchange so out of balance, like I said, many patients rely on the experiences and opinions of their peers to help them process the very complex information they receive about infertility. And thank goodness there is a loud voice of thousands of people online who are speaking and educating others about infertility, infertility treatments, and infertility practices and physicians. And there are thousands of infertility support groups and pages on Facebook, for example, and Instagram, and hundreds of infertility blogs and dozens of podcasts about fertility. So what can we do as a practice? Well, what we can do is we can actually create a forum in which patients can communicate and drive the patients to our forum so that we can help drive the conversation. We can create the content so that we can disseminate very good, proper, accurate information. Because what happens is that when patients rely on each other, sometimes misinformation is disseminated. And we want our patients to have the proper information so that they can make a proper informed decision about their care. And this helps drive the conversation and drives patients to our practice. So we want to become the voice for the people with infertility in our area. We want to connect with the patients online to create a natural and honest referral system. So how can we do that? Well, we should probably try to utilize the most current methods of communication to be able to send our message. For example, you can utilize Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And we've got a lot of speakers today who are absolute experts on this, and we'll give you a lot of tips today. And if patients and centers are not communicating, unfortunately, that creates an issue. And that gets us to the fourth part of the sentence. A competitive advantage and disadvantage between large and small fertility practices that can occur when all of the above happens. So let's talk about the competitive disadvantage. Essentially, large practices can utilize the power of the group to combine more money to create a bigger marketing power, basically. So they have a bigger war chest, and they can leverage better deals with insurance companies, and they can actually market much strongly and much stronger online, more so than any smaller practice with a smaller budget can. Large practices can outspend your marketing budget, and they can spend more on social media advertising. They can create constant contacts with referrals, and it takes patients from practices whose budgets are not as big and are not as attractive on social media. So how can we make the advantage in our court? How can we level the playing field as a smaller fertility practice? Well, what you can do is you can keep up with the patient's attention as much as they need to, because if you can keep up with the attention of the patient, then you can level the playing field. And if you make the effort to build trust with the patient and help them where they spend their most attention, in other words, online, on social media, you can reach them in such a way that large competitors cannot. And smaller fertility practices have access to a word-of-mouth referral network that has never previously been available because of all the social media advances that are available today. And that levels the playing field. So in the end, information exchange is happening at a rapid pace. And as you know, the smartphone is the #1 tool to exchange information. As a fertility practice, you should push content that is optimized for the smartphone. Patients' expectations are not being met, and we need to try to meet those. And they're increasingly expecting quicker and quicker responses. And we as a practice should try to hire dedicated personnel to triage patient calls, emails, and texts. We can even employ Facebook Messenger chatbots, as well as other artificial intelligence means to try to answer questions quickly and timely so that we don't lose the patient's attention. Additionally, when patients begin to create connected communities, that's fantastic. They support each other, and we absolutely support that. However, when patients turn to each other, there's a lot of misinformation that is disseminated. We want to make sure that patients have accurate information. And so thus, we may want to try to create content on the most utilized platforms so that we can drive the conversation and provide and disseminate proper information to the patient so they can make a proper informed decision about their care, and thus even drive referrals to your practice. And how do we make the competitive disadvantages into advantages for a small practice? Well, because larger practices and corporations have more money to spend on marketing, we can level the playing field by doing all of the above things that we just discussed. I am on the ASRM committee for technology, and I'm the chairman of the ASRM Technology Committee. And we have published 2 guidelines, and you can find them online. The first one is Guidance on the Use of Social Media in Reproductive Medicine Practice. And it provides all sorts of content that should be recommended to be shared on social media. Bottom line is, we recommend educating rather than giving out personal medical advice. And there are some pitfalls to watch out for, and we have made recommendations, and you can read them all online. The second guideline that we as the Technology Committee have published is this guidance for using text, email, and video communication in practices devoted to reproductive medicine. We've got a lot of tips from the pros on do's and don'ts, and you can read all about the conclusions all online. So in the end, you might think that technology might be hurting you, but if you understand how to utilize technology properly and avoid the pitfalls and remain HIPAA compliant, technology can actually help your practice tremendously. And in the end, remember, technology is only a useful servant, but a dangerous master. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Koo. We are going to do a little bit different format because we have a big panel today. We're going to go through all the presentations, which are short, and then have all your questions at the end. And I'm seeing some great questions come in, so please keep sending us questions. My next video is with Dr. Laura Shaheen. Dr. Laura Shaheen is a phenomenal reproductive endocrinologist at Pacific Northwest Fertility and in Seattle. And she's a clinical assistant professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. She did OBGYN at UCSF and completed her fellowship at Stanford. And she is fully dedicated to raising education, and awareness and breaking down barriers and stigma against infertility. And she's done that through multiple means. She has a wonderful book published called Not Broken on miscarriage. And you already saw some of her TikTok videos, which have millions of views. So let's play Dr. Shaheen's presentation now.
So thank you so much to the organizers for creating the session. I am so excited to be here today to talk about my personal experience as a physician on social media and how I want you to know that if you're interested in getting on social media, no matter who you are, it's not too late. And I've got some action steps for you to think about your purpose and think about ways that you can get started. If you're already on social media, that's okay too. I think it's always good to pause, reset, and think about what you're doing. And I think you can find this talk valuable as well. So let's get started. First of all, our goals for the talk are, let's review the pros and cons about being on social media. There are some wonderful things about it, and there's some negative things about it. So you want to be very thoughtful before you get started. We're going to review those action steps that I talked about as far as how to get started. And then I really want you to think through finding your purpose, thinking about why you're on social media. So we'll really cover that as well. So for me, social media was a way to get information and get out information about books that I had written. So I self-published books on fertility and miscarriage. I did it for my patients. I wanted other people to learn about it. And I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have an agent. And so I decided to start a professional social media account. Now, since then, it's really become a powerful way to educate, and I really enjoy teaching people about miscarriage and infertility. I'm a reproductive endocrinologist, and so that is my field, and I am passionate about it, and I want people to know about it. I've also found it's an excellent way to connect with other colleagues, and not just other physicians, but people throughout the field, embryologists, scientists, journalists, former patients, future patients. It's just a wonderful way to connect with people that are interested in my passions as well. And quite honestly, it's been a really fun, creative outlet for me. I started on TikTok about a year and a half ago. And I promise you, you do not have to dance and be a teenager to be on TikTok. They are really cultivating education on TikTok, and you can do it in a fun way. And it's just been a really, really creative and fun outlet for me. I want to pause for a second and just think about a question for you. You know, our patients are getting medical information on social media. And we kind of joke about patients looking for information on Dr. Google or WebMD, but they're actually going to TikTok and following doctors. They're going to Instagram and following medical influencers. And right now, there's a pretty big void. And I just want to put a question out there. Do we have a responsibility to be on social media? So you might think about it in a little bit of a different way. So there are definitely some pros and cons about making this decision. So pros are, number one, you can own your online presence. You are online already, you know, whether it's on your company's website or your practices, social media, you know, reviews for doctors and practices and medical professionals are all over the internet. And if you make your own online presence with social media, you can take back some of that control. And I think that's really positive. You can connect with colleagues. You can stay in touch and really be on top of what your patients are reading. It's really nice when a patient comes in and says, oh, I read about or I saw or heard about this new supplement that is going to be perfect for egg quality and I want to talk to you about it. I can say, oh yeah, I've seen some posts about that. And let's talk about it because there's always pros and cons. And you can fight medical misinformation. And I think that that is a real pro. There are definitely cons. It's a time commitment. And so that's one of the things you have to think about before you get started is like how much time you're going to allocate towards it and not go over that. And there's a real imposter syndrome, fear of failure, fear of judgment from other colleagues. There's a little bit of stigma about being a doctor on social media. It's starting to change. It was definitely there when I got started 4 or 5 years ago. And now people are really starting to understand the positive role that physicians and medical professionals can have on social media, but there's still always going to be a little bit of that worry. So pros and cons. So step one, find your purpose. Be very thoughtful about what you want to do before you start. And if you already started, great. Take time to think again. Think about why you're getting on social media, whether it's for education, maybe it's to try to get more patients into your practice. That's okay, but just think about why you want to do this. Pick your niche, and you'll hear a lot about that when people are talking about social media. And your niche is what you do every single day. So your profession, and people want to learn about it. And also, don't worry too much. You can always change and alter later. Is it going to be purely professional and educational, or are you going to add some of your personal life into it? And that's really important to think about, because once you put your personal information out there, you can't really get it back. A great example of this is sharing kids on social media. I've made a choice for my family that I'm not sharing pictures of my kids or where they go to school or things like that. I can share some sort of out of the office things and talk about my family, but I don't actually have to share their images or their names or their personal information. And that was the right choice for my family. And as you're learning, follow other doctors or other professionals that are your profession on social media. See what they're doing, learn a little bit, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then you can decide what's right for you. Step two, choose a username. And you know what? The easiest thing to do, honestly, is just choose your name. It's you, it's who you are, it's your niche, you could say. And, a few years ago, it was really popular to choose like Egg Expert 101 or some sort of, username that kind of brought into your niche. And honestly, so you'll hear from Natalie Crawford today if you haven't already. She talked about this a couple of years ago. She just said, if you're a doctor going on social media, use your name. That's who you are. And I think that's excellent advice, because I can find my friends easier and my name is who I am, and you can use it across a lot of different platforms. So sometimes if you choose something like Egg Expert 101, that might be up and available on Instagram, but you might not be able to use it on Twitter. And usually your name is unique to you. So just think about that. Step three, make a plan. And what I mean by that is, what are you going to do? Are you going to post once a day? Are you going to post a couple times a week? Are you going to post once a week? It doesn't matter, but just think about that and be thoughtful in your plan. How are you going to find the time to schedule your posts and write? You can change and sort of see how things go, but it's nice to kind of be a little bit thoughtful before you get started. And think about, are you going to be doing all the posting yourself, or are you going to be hiring it out? Personally, I've done everything myself on social media because I enjoy it. It's a creative outlet. It's my authentic voice, and I love it. I truly love it. But if you don't love it, but you still want to be online, have a presence in social media, there are companies that you can hire out to, but just think about it a little bit and think about how you want that to be done. Okay. Step four, content ideas. A real stumbling block is, I don't know what to post on social media. I don't know what to get out there. There's infinite ideas. Think about educational content. Think about what you do every day. If you're a physician or a nurse, how are you counseling your patients? Think about the question a patient answered yesterday and write a post about it. If one person has a question, a lot of people have the same question. If a study comes out in your field, share that information. What's your interpretation of the study? What are the stats? And if your field is in the news, that is a wonderful content idea, because you can reflect on what the media is saying about it. And quite honestly, they usually have these flashy clickbait titles, but they really don't get into the meat of the article. And we, as medical professionals or in your field, can clarify how we interpret the data. What about behind the scenes? Those are fun posts to do. What is life like in your role and what you do? And then number three, kind of Maybe you get a little bit personal. There's pros and cons. I already kind of talked about choices for myself. And step 5, and this is one of the most important things, it's important before you get started, or if you're already on social media, think about having a healthy relationship with social media. And what I mean is, turn off notifications. You do not need to know when someone comments on every single one of your posts. You do not need to know when your friend posts. I just highly recommend, I don't have any social media notifications on my phone. I go to social media, it does not come to me. Number 2, post because you want to. Post because it's something that you're interested in. Don't feel like you have to. When it starts to feel like a chore or a job, then it's probably not going to you're not going to get that much joy from it. So be very cautious about that. Number 3, open the app with intention. And I learned this recently and I love it. Spend less time just scrolling, but open it up and think, okay, I'm opening it up to post. I'm opening it up to answer, 5 comments in some posts of mine. I'm opening up to check out and see what Serena and Roohi and Natalie are doing today because I want to see what my friends are doing. Just go into it with intention. The more time you spend scrolling, although that can be great for content ideas, the more time you spend aimlessly scrolling, the more time you feel the negative impacts of social media. Oh, that person has more followers than me. Oh, that person is so much prettier than I am. Oh my gosh, this person had such a great idea for content. How am I going to think of something so great? Just be mindful of that. And if that's happening, kind of pause, okay? Number 4, more creating, less consuming, kind of along the same lines. You're in there to create, educate, connect, but don't be there just to endlessly scroll. And number 5, take breaks. That's really important. If you're starting to feel some of those negative impacts of social media, just turn it off for a little while, whether it's a day, a week, however long you need, and then come back to it when you're ready. So I really enjoyed connecting with you today. You can find me on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest, Peloton, and it's all Dr. Laura Shaheen. So I have the same username across everywhere. I also have a blog. You can find some more resources. I love finding books and resources for my patients within my field, and then I put them on my website. And so it's drlaurashaheen.com. And so I look forward to connecting with you. Reach out if you have any questions. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wow. I got a lot of great tips. I'm active on social media, but that was a wonderful presentation. Dr. Shaheen had to run and do an emergency D&C, and we are going to ask questions later. I'm hoping she can join us later. Next up is the phenomenal Dr. Cindy M.P. Duke, who is a Johns Hopkins and Yale-trained physician, scientist, and entrepreneur, board certified in gynecology, obstetrics, reproductive endocrinology, and infertility, and a PhD in virology. And as America's only dual accredited women's health fertility expert and virologist, Dr. Duke is a physician, founder, medical director, and lab director of the Nevada Fertility Institute in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. And Dr. Duke is active on every platform. And this is one of my favorite topics, the power of social media to break down barriers of access to care and addressing racial bias in social media and advertising. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Duke.
Thank you, Serena, and hello, everyone. Sorry for that minor technical delay there, but it's indeed my honor to present on this topic. And while it's titled Addressing Racial Bias in Social Media and Advertising. There is a lot baked into that title, but first I have nothing to disclose, no financial conflicts or relationships as it relates to this presentation. And so the first question I like to bring up whenever we're talking about access and racial bias is actually realizing how diverse that subject matter is. For a lot of people, when they hear questions as it relates to access and racial bias, they're thinking, oh, is it a Black person, white person question, or sort of what we think of? But the truth is, it's really a very diverse group of patients that we're talking about. And so we're actually talking, wherever you are in the world, we're talking about racial and ethnic minorities. And of course, these groups change and vary depending on your own location. But nonetheless, there's always a group or a number of groups who are marginalized, especially in the reproductive medicine sphere. We're talking about LGBTQIA patients. And of course, many of these overlap as well. And so as I present today, I think what you'd see is that whenever you're thinking about access and are you having that accessible online presence, are you addressing these different layers? And the truth is, if you think in a very inclusive way, you will end up addressing all of these groups whether or not you're intending to, if you're doing it correctly. Are you addressing patients with disabilities? Are you thinking about single parents by choice, right? So most people, if they're thinking LGBTQIA patients, they're considering the fact that they do need a fertility clinic most of the time to help them build out their families. We're thinking about infertility, and there's definitely more attention being drawn to racial and ethnic minorities. But one group of patients for whom, one, awareness isn't being raised and for whom they're not being told about the possibilities is those who are single parents, male or female, but who would like to start a family without a partner. So are you addressing that need? And lastly, are you making sure that those who are economically disadvantaged in your community, wherever you are aware of services, or is your current communication style, your current marketing intentionally isolating them from your practice? And is that your goal? You know, I don't know that many practices intend to isolate the economically disadvantaged, but your messaging, how you present your message, can isolate those groups. Similarly, for those of racial and ethnic minorities, if you're not presenting an inclusive picture, if you're not presenting a patient base and a staff base that looks welcoming, are they really going to come, especially if it involves traveling some distance to find you? Will they come to you if the messaging being put out there is one of you are other than when it comes to our practice? And so it's very important. And similarly, that goes for language as well. So the first thing I like to ask everyone, and it was my approach when I decided to get on social media and build my practice. And as a backstory, you know, I am one of those smaller practices that Dr. Koo was speaking about, which is I launched a single provider practice in November of 2016. And I launched in a market, Las Vegas, which for most of you, you're aware, it's a heavy marketing city in terms of the casinos and the entertainment industry. So for example, it's very expensive to get TV ad time. It's very expensive to get a billboard. It's very expensive to even get into magazines. And so I went on social media just to let people know I was there, and it resonated. And it has continued to resonate, but not just with patients in my market, but globally. And part of that has to do with my intentional use of inclusive messaging. So it's not enough to say you're on social media, nor is it enough to say you have a website or you're doing web campaigns, or that you have enough money to afford the Facebook or the Instagram or the TikTok campaign. The bigger question is it inclusive in your messaging? So what is inclusive messaging? Well, first, language. So are all of your posts about men and women, or are you considering your non-binary patients? Are you using language like folks born with ovaries, folks born with a uterus, folks born without a uterus, right? Thinking about all of our different patient demographics out there. Are you talking about those with a testicle? Because again, you may not necessarily have patients who identify as men or women in this binary sense that you're thinking, but they're seeking fertility care, or it never really sparked a thought in them, but they knew they wanted a family. This is your opportunity to reach them, right? Are you using inclusive visuals? So for example, and I did a study that we presented at ASRM last fall, and which is we surveyed websites for all of the SART clinics across the United States. And even my own clinic didn't pass this test, which is we were looking for evidence of visual inclusivity on the websites. And what we found is 64% of websites do have LGBTQIA inclusive messaging and visuals, but that's about as far as most of these sites went. If you actually started looking at the language was very binary, men, women, and that's it. In terms of looking for racial visuals, then we also saw really limited visuals when it came to showing diverse patients and diverse babies on the website. And think about it, right? If there's a person of color who's seeking to build their family and they're going through your website or your social media and they're not seeing a single baby that could reflect the child they will produce, that's concerning. That's very concerning. And we're currently doing one where we're looking at international clinics around the world to see how their pictures reflect their national composition in terms of ethnic background and visual ethnic background. And that is a touchy subject, right? Because someone may be visually appearing, let's say white, but they may be of a certain ethnic group, etc. But it's important to your patient, it is what they see. Perception is what they see, not what you know to be true about yourself. So are you being intentional about that messaging? In terms of staffing, similar things, right? For a lot of patients from ethnic minorities, from racial ethnic minorities, their concern is, will they be welcomed? For a long time, if we think about some of the different dynamics in countries such as the United States, some European countries, certainly even in countries like India, parts of China, etc., there have been questions about whether or not medicine has strongly attempted to dissuade or intentionally stop certain ethnic groups from reproducing. And so you have to be aware that there are these layers of distrust that may be informing your potential patient. And therefore, how are you addressing that to let them know you are welcoming to their group? Well, one can be as simple as showing diverse staffing. You know, there's so much that a potential patient reads into a name because they recognize certain names, the roots of certain names, as being suggestive of their region or the region that they are ethnically from. So there's a lot to be thinking about there as well. You know, doing staff features, Dr. Lowell referenced that one, which is, you know, are they having an opportunity to meet your staff? Are you sharing a little bit about your staff on your website, on your social media? Maybe when your staff have a birthday, not necessarily on the same day if you don't want to share their birthday, but show a celebration, show that life is happening behind the scenes and that you are celebrating the diversity of your staff as well. Are you participating in the community? Can they identify you as someone who really cares about their community and their community's longevity, which is tied to reproduction? Are you involved in the community? And lastly, are you using different language options? Are you using language that matches your community? You know, in our study last year, what we saw was that a lot of the clinics on the West Coast of the United States were definitely more mindful and actually had different options for language settings on the website so that you can select, if you were not a primary English speaker, you could select another language and the website would now be coded in that language for the reader. Are you doing that? You don't have to, but then again, if your clinic is located somewhere where maybe 40% of your population is Spanish speaking, then the question is, what are my demographics here? Who am I reaching with this, right? And speaking to issues that matter to them, share statistics and references highlighting the issues as they pertain to reproductive medicine for your patients, whether it be about fertility, infertility, and how you, being mindful of that, address those things when you see your patients. So I am obviously a Black woman, but certainly I talk a lot about racial and ethnic things as it relates to reproduction in some of my posts. And I do that in part because I want patients to be educated first and foremost. I want them to know the statistics as it relates to, I apologize, as it relates to infertility in Black women. I want them to know the statistics as it relates to infertility in Asian and Pacific Island women. I want them to know the statistics as it relates to fertility treatment and how long it takes them on average to seek out treatment, so that if someone's sitting at home and it's been 5 years since they've been trying to conceive and they're thinking maybe I'll wait 3 more years, I want them to know they're actually going into that average length that someone of their background tends to, but it's not going to help, it's hurting, and I explain why. And so again, you're using the statistics and the information, but using it to help educate and hopefully motivate your patients to actually take charge of their own health and their own reproduction. Right? And then lastly, meet your patients where they are. So check your online footprint. It is never surprising to me, although it should be, right, that there's so many professionals out there who, once they get ready to start their clinic's website, they go ahead and just start a new social media handle, and they believe that's where that ends, but it does not. When your patient is looking to get to know you, they're going to Google you. They're going to look for searches. So your old tweets are going to show up. If you were in different chat rooms talking about certain things, etc., make sure you go and you check your history, right? Certainly, if you were someone who's maybe used language that wasn't very inclusive of an LGBTQ community in the past, but now you're getting started, be aware. So always meet your patients where they are. And so lastly, because I know we have to keep this moving, I want to summarize. Regularly assess your online presence. Utilize staff and clinic members to help you check the community pulse. For example, at my clinic, we keep an ongoing Google Doc, and anything that a patient brings up or comments on, my staff keeps that for me so that I can go through that for some ideas about what I post on social media. What do I want to address? As Dr. Shaheen talked about, she mentioned, what's happening in the news, recently published papers, etc. Those are all things to consider as well. And lastly, use technology to its fullest. So consider social media, use HIPAA compliant two-way text messaging to stay connected with your patients, perform those patient satisfaction surveys, the internal ones that really help you know what is important to your patients, use interactive electronic medical records, make sure they're mobile friendly as much as you can, and keep your websites up to date. And with that, I end this and engage your patients in and out of the office. Thank you.
That was phenomenal, Dr. Duke. Thank you so much. And we're getting some incredible questions. So hopefully you will be around because we have some amazing questions coming up. Please keep putting the questions in the Q&A. And it is my great honor at this point to introduce a good friend and colleague, Dr. Roohi Jeelani. She is the Director of Research and Education at Vios Fertility Institute in Chicago, Illinois. She's a fellow of the American College of OBGYN, boarded in OBGYN and reproductive endocrinology. She's a member of the AMA, ASRM, American Association of Gynecologic Laparoscopists, and she has numerous publications to her name, and as well as research grants. And there is a lot more about her full bio on ivfmeeting.com, as well as our other speakers. We really haven't done them justice in our introduction. So Dr. Jeelani has a really compelling topic that was touched on earlier, and her presentation is called It's Personal. Dr. Jeelani.
Thank you, Dr. Chen, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you all for having me. Once again, I'm Dr. Roohi Jeelani. I'm the Director of Research and Education at Vios Fertility Institute. And speaking about my personal touch, it's personal. You can follow my journey on Instagram at Roohi Jeelani MD, and TikTok also, which I'm not that good about using. I have nothing to disclose. So the art of influence, why is it important? So before we kind of deep dive into my personal journey and what I'm doing on my social media, kind of to reiterate what some of our great speakers have said, that initially social media was used to connect with friends and family that no longer live in near proximity. However, it's evolved over time. And now all social media platforms are being used as almost a Google to gain and share knowledge. Interestingly, over the past 10 years or decade, you can see that social media and medicine have collided to potentially change the face of patient-centered care. And like Dr. Koo was saying, it's changing how expectations are set, what and when patients want to see us, and what they're willing to tolerate. So it kind of stems back to the power of connection, right? Having this little device at your hand almost makes you feel like you're intimately connected either to your provider or to your clinic. So out of many fields of medicine, fertility is one of them that's gaining really popular prevalence as physician influencers and other type of influencers that kind of broad stroke fit into that fertility category. So here at BIOS, we did an anonymous survey that was presented at ASRM 2 years ago that looked at to what extent do fertility patients turn to on social media, and what exactly are they looking for, and when do they seek this help? So out of all the patients surveyed, we had 219 that participated. 69% of them were in that reproductive age group that we're looking for. 75% of these respondents reported that they were likely to follow their physician on social media. That's a huge number. And this was a brief, quick 2-week survey. Out of that, over half of them said that they're actually looking for a personal side of their physician. So outside of work, what does their doctor look like to be intimately connected to their physician? And then the other 50% said that they were looking for more of that medical and educational background from their physician, and that's why they followed them. Overall, majority of patients said that they were really comfortable seeking out help. And if you look at this, one of the things that sticks out was that it wasn't necessarily from physicians or somebody who specialized in fertility, but just over support groups over social media. So why the personal touch? What does that really bring to the community? And what does that bring to me as a patient? So I'm going to first start off by saying that sharing my own journey has kind of made me feel as a part of a larger community, and helping educate patients through my own journey has shown them that they're empowered to make changes. I now have patients coming to me by saying, hey, I saw that you did, for example, duostim. Am I a good candidate for it? I saw that you said you want 3 embryos. What should I be banking for my future? So not only am I feeling empowered by sharing myself, but I'm also educating my patients. If you look on the right, that video is from my Instagram, sharing my egg retrieval yesterday. It has also shown my vulnerability that I'm not immune to this. And if I'm not immune to this, likely most aren't. So patients have said, I feel so comfortable that I wasn't denying it initially, but I saw you, so I'm here to see you. It helps break the stigma of seeking out help, that there's something wrong with you. It's making them see that there's guidelines set, there's a medical aspect of it, and that was set for a reason. And truly, it revolutionizes fertility care. Patients are willing to not only cross just that state border, but national and international borders to feel that they're getting that level of care and education so they feel empowered to make their own decisions. So what are the action steps? And to me, it's very simple. And I know not everyone feels comfortable using their personal journey or sharing a part of them that's not the doctor part, and that's completely okay. But what's important is to see, to reiterate that our patients are on social media. This is where they're getting the information. So whether we choose to empower and educate them through sharing our personal touch, or whether we educate them based on science and data, we need to go where they are. If we're not present there, somebody else is educating them, and that is where they're getting their information. So just for example, 69% of US adults use Facebook. This is from a year ago, so I'm sure the numbers have gone up. 37% use Instagram. Instagram is the fastest growing social media platform. It went from 9% in 2012 to 37% just 2019, and has quadrupled in the last 4 years. And I'm sure it's even higher in 2021, where in time of COVID, we're doing everything virtually. So whether it be that you're sharing and educating based on your history or just sharing and educating based on what you believe in, I truly think social media is a powerful tool. And for me, incorporating my journey has really elevated my patient care, truly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roo, for such a poignant presentation. And now, can I introduce you to the amazing Jennifer J. Palumbo, freelance writer, avid women's health advocate. She's a Forbes Women's contributor, and her blog, The 2-Week Wait, was awarded the Hope Award for Best Blog from Resolve, the National Infertility Association, and named the best IVF blog by Egg Donation Friends. And as an infertility subject matter expert, she's been interviewed on news outlets such as CNN's, NPR, Fox, NBC, BBC America, and was featured on the documentary Vegas Baby. She's an incredible human being, and here she is.
I am Jennifer J. Palumbo. I'm not a doctor, nor have I played one on TV, but I'm very honored to be invited to the Pineapple Warriors today. I even have my pineapple dress on. And I am here to talk to you about humor and the infertility journey, which I know may seem like a dichotomy because infertility in and of itself is not all that humorous. However, I have a point, so just stay with me briefly. Okay, let me start off by saying this. There was a study done by the American Physiological Society that showed humor and laughter can create an environment that promotes learning. Evidence documents that appropriate humor, appropriate being the key word, also attracts and sustains a more relaxed environment. In addition, humor also reduces anxiety, enhances participation, and increases motivation. Now, what does all that mean? For me, as a former stand-up comic who still occasionally performs when she has the energy, taking my sense of humor and using it as a hardcore coping mechanism to trying to conceive was a huge asset. It kept me sane, and it also just kept things funny. When I started down my infertility path, I was around 34, 35, which in the real world, I didn't think was that old. But in the fertility world, as you all know, it's like Betty White and the Golden Girls. Aww. So as a Roman Catholic Italian, I was taught that if you were in a mile radius of sperm, you would just get pregnant. It came as a tremendous shock when this did not happen. And quickly, my RE had me doing several times cycles. And then we moved on to IUIs. Now, for whatever reason, my IUIs always ended up on holidays. It's Valentine's Day, very romantic. Thanksgiving. I'm not going to make a turkey baster joke. I'm thinking it, but I'm not going to make it. And then the third IUI was around Christmas. Now, my RE at the time would have music piped into the exam room, and I cannot explain the joy of being inseminated while listening to Here Comes Santa Claus. I mean, that's just comedy gold right there, really. So soon after that, it was time to do IVF, the big guns. And up until this point, I thought that the needle went in through your stomach to retrieve the eggs. Yeah, no. So when my doctor told me exactly where they put the needle, I realized again, well, that's just hilarious because IVF doesn't need a metaphor. It's not like getting a needle in your vagina. It is a needle actually in your vagina. If you don't have a sense of humor about that, I don't know what to tell you. So I did my IVF. It was not successful. I basically paid $15,000 to get my period when most people get it for free. So you bet I needed a sense of humor about it. Soon after, they discovered I had a uterine polyp taking up major space in my uterus. I don't know how we missed this. So I did what any good infertility comic would do. I named him Jackson Polyp. He was an artist who's down on his luck in between jobs, loafing in my uterus. I even created his own Twitter account, which was actually very popular and highly engaged with. People were quite sad once Jackson Pollock was physically evicted, if you will, by a DNC. Soon after, I threw something called the No Baby Shower. And my logic was, why should the pregnant people have all the fun? I invited everyone who's trying to conceive or struggling with infertility. And the decor was Minnie Mouse and Barbie, because neither one of them had children. I served soft cheeses, sushi, alcohol. We had goodie bags that had ovulation prediction kits in it, Band-Aids, ice packs, chocolate. And of course, we played Pin the Tail on the Sperm. I highly recommend that. It's fun for hours. Not long after that, I created something called a series of infertility rides at the Unamusement Park. And such rides include the fertility insurance merry-go-round. Round and round she goes. If she'll get coverage, nobody knows. Then there was the hormonal log flume, where you enjoy the wild ride that drugs like Clomid, Lupron, and Gonal-F can provide you. And then, of course, there's the IVF roller coaster, which includes the ups and downs of fertility treatment and trying to conceive. All of this resonated tremendously with people because when you kind of apply a sense of humor, it makes it less painful and you kind of give it less power. So on to my clinical trial, which was my second IVF. And I did a clinical trial because it was free. I don't care if it's a prostate exam. If it's free, I'm doing it. And that was an experience as well. I had to go every single day because it was a clinical trial and not just your regular monitoring. And my favorite moment was when the nurse said, what I'm about to do goes against all of my training. Here's a mystery drug. I don't know what it does. I don't know what it is, but inject yourself with it. Once again, that wasn't successful. Now I'm on to my third IVF. I had switched doctors several times. We were out of coverage, money, sanity, and let's be honest, my sense of humor had really taken a hit at this point. I had 13 eggs retrieved. I only had one embryo. And luckily, through, I don't know, a whole bunch of baby dust and just good odds, that one embryo stuck around and is now my 9-year-old son. And I couldn't be more grateful. Which leads me to something that gets talked about a lot in the infertility world. That's called hope. HOPE, which for many people in the infertility world is a 4-letter word. I'm now going to quote Nietzsche, who is a German philosopher, who once said, hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torment of man. He was probably a lot of fun at parties, I'm sure. But that's where humor comes into play, because while hope can sometimes be good for people, it can sometimes be sort of toxic positivity for others. And so I think humor, when used again appropriately, can help sort of secretly slip in some positivity, even if you don't want to go down the hope road. So more than 30 years has passed since Norman Cousins published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, really promoting the potential medicinal benefits of laughter and humor. But there's still some hesitation to use it in healthcare. And I understand this. Infertility is extremely emotional. There's pregnancy loss. There's financial issues. There's self-esteem issues. But I still believe that laughter can be an effective tool in both educating around fertility health and just helping the infertility patient deal with all the uncertainties of what's going on. So I'll close with this. It's something Robert Previn said. He's the noted laughter researcher. That sounds like a great job, doesn't it? He said this in the documentary Laugh Out Loud. He said this, until the scientists work out all of the details, get in all the laughter that you can. And I firmly believe that. Given all of our options, why not use a little humor? Even if you are a doctor, even if you've played one on TV, or you're just someone in the infertility world that wants to help patients. If you can inject humor as often as you inject hormones, it can be incredible for you, the patient, and for the entire experience. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. And you are absolutely fabulous and so right. Okay, on to another amazing woman, Dr. Natalie Crawford. She's board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, and is a director of patient experience and outreach, and co-founder of Fora Fertility, a boutique fertility practice in Austin, Texas. Dr. Crawford has been named as Top Doctors and Top Doctors for Women, listed in 2020 by Austin Monthly. She won Best Fertility Specialist in Austin by the 2019 Austin Birth Awards, and was a recipient of the Hope Award for Social Influence by Resolve, the National Infertility Association. She was also named one of Austin's top 40 under 40 in 2020 for her work empowering women. Quite an incredible person. And here is the amazing Dr. Natalie.
Thank you so much, Tracey. I'm going to be talking about closing communication gaps in healthcare. And I want to start by just saying I have a few disclosures as it pertains to this. I've been on social media a while. I have a contract with Google, who owns YouTube Health. I get money from YouTube ads and creator fund from TikTok, and I will do brand collaborations when appropriate. Why I'm giving this talk or why I've been asked is I'm a board certified RE and I co-founded Fora Fertility, but really it's all these other reasons. I have a large Instagram presence. I have a blog, a podcast, a YouTube, a TikTok. I'm also on the board of directors for the Association of Healthcare Social Media, and I'm president of the ASRM Social Media Special Interest Group. This looks like a lot of stuff, which can be really overwhelming, but the truth is none of this came overnight. I started an Instagram account alone about 5 years ago, and all this other stuff exists because people who are our patients wanted this information. They wanted education. They wanted to know more about their bodies. And so I kept creating more, and I kept encouraging more people to come online with me. In 2016, I did a survey looking at social users and physicians across different platforms. This was in 2016, so this is old data, so just imagine what we would see now. At the time, we had over 3,000 people who responded as users of social media, 93% age 18 to 44, 98% women, 87% highly educated. So this is our target patient population. And the majority of these consumers desire to learn medical information via social media, 85%. The same survey, we asked 200 physicians, most of them were OBGYNs, if they were online. And although only 49% of them had a professional social media account, and many said they wouldn't even post medical content on that account. So you can see there's a disconnect from what people want to see and what physicians who were on social media were providing. And this was about topics that people were interested in. And just put your eyes to the bottom. What consumers were most interested in learning about are medical facts, behind the scenes as a physician, newsworthy research, work-life balance, clinical cases. So there's things that Laura was saying right away from the beginning of what maybe are ideas you can talk about. You've heard Roohi and Cindy talk about them as well. People are looking for this information and they're looking for physicians to provide it. For our field specifically, for fertility and women's health, we, the experts in our field, are not the ones providing the majority of information online. There are credible credentials of people who are popular, and the quality of their information is really poor. I'm going to show a few examples. Our patient population is also highly savvy, highly educated, and the media can portray us as scary and deceitful and just wanting to make money off of people, that we're not in it for patient care. Using social media shows that you are modern and up to date with technology, and it can both educate and provide a mechanism for trust and helping patients and physicians have a better relationship. And like Roohi said, over 80% of Americans get their health information online, putting something into some type of a search bar. That is where they're getting their health facts. So go where your people are. These are examples of what our patients are seeing. Birth control pills are depleting all your vitamins. Epstein-Barr virus is causing PCOS. And fertility cliff at age 35 is not true. All of these accounts have over 100,000 followers, and all of these posts have almost 10,000 likes and shares or more. Then there's the media. Big fertility makes billions mass producing human embryos and destroying them in experiments. New gene editing could lead to creation of super baby. Woman says parents' fertility doctor is her father. So all of that leads us to how do we restore trust? And there's a lot of different platforms to choose from. And you don't have to go to all of them. I think that's one of the most overwhelming things is somebody says, well, I don't have time to go be on Instagram and Facebook or start a podcast and a YouTube and a blog or on TikTok or on Clubhouse. So I'm going to do none of the things. But I really think that if you have a desire to truly educate people, you can provide better care to both the people who are in your office and to people all over if you kind of hone in on at least one of these platforms. I'm going to give a few tips about each of these super fast, and then we're going to go to one last slide. Instagram is very low-hanging fruit. It is free and it is easy. It is microblogging, meaning both the picture that you use and the words that you use are both important. You can see I did tell Laura that I'm a big fan of using your name and putting your real name up in the heading. And as Cindy said, you can now add your pronouns to Instagram. So an easy way to show that you're inclusive to other people is to use your own pronouns when you describe yourself. That is a welcoming door to let others know that you're welcome to discuss however they choose to identify. And then be wise in your bio. Who are you? Where do you work? Don't put lots of hashtags or cluttering. Really, you want somebody to look at this and know who you are right away and what they could get from following you. But the picture is important, and Instagram loves people. And so a stack of books is never going to be as popular as a person. And also shareable images. So we're seeing a lot more medical graphics take off. Instagram is putting some money behind helping promote shareable graphics, especially when it comes to health content. So you can get a free resource like Canva, make a health graphic about a fact, and that can be easily shared. Facebook is another platform. Really, our generation of patients is starting to be less on Facebook and more on Instagram. Facebook is a good way to connect with your current people. It can be harder, but it's a very easy platform to use, especially because Instagram and Facebook are co-owned. So you can forward share any post you put on Instagram can go right to a Facebook also. I have a podcast. This is my podcast art. A podcast is not hard. I record it in my closet with just my computer and a microphone. It is highly educational. My podcast now has over 1 million downloads, which is mind-blowing, but the most popular episodes are the menstrual cycle, age and fertility, Infertility 101, talking about the very basics that we talk about every day. It's really my spiel for this is about egg freezing put onto a podcast. And I will even send my own patients there to listen to it. And it helps build trust because they've heard my voice, they've heard me counsel them. And that really is breaking down a big barrier between the time we have limited in office and the time that our patients get with us and the education. We've all seen patients be shell-shocked when they hear some of the things we're talking about, and we know they're not absorbing it all, but you can provide content for them to help absorb that later by hearing it again. A blog is always very helpful. It helps with your SEO. I think every fertility physician should have their own website, which is owning their own name, their own domain. As many people have said, controlling your online persona is so powerful. It allows patients to find you even when you change practices or open your own practice. And by having this little land on the internet that is your name, nobody can take that from you, and you can update people and it will grow over time. So there's no reason why you can't go buy your own name, which probably costs $6. YouTube is growing like wildfire. So Google owns YouTube. Google's the #1 search engine. YouTube is the #2 search engine. I will tell you, my sister, who's almost 10 years younger than me, and our ideal patient demographic searches everything in YouTube and not in Google. This is where our people are starting to look for information. YouTube is a little bit harder and more intimidating, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I think the perfectionists in us want to create perfect content. And one of the keys, if you want to go on social media, is just to create. Be okay making errors. Be okay that you may stutter or misspeak a word. All of that is totally fine, but getting good education out is so powerful. I now have more patients who find me from YouTube than anywhere else, and my YouTube is very small compared to my other platforms. I think it speaks to the power of that platform for reach. Laura's the star on TikTok, and you saw hers. They are very short videos. They are very easy to make. They have huge viral power, and there's so much medical misinformation on that platform. Cindy talked about Clubhouse, or I don't even think she talked about it, but she's the master at Clubhouse, which is another way she's breaking down barriers over there. And there's always going to be more. So if you're going to jump in, you can't be intimidated by the fact that you can't be in all the places. You just have to start going. The last thing I want to talk about is patient care metrics. So a personal experiment of mine is that I saw an increase in my practice after I started the podcast. So I started the podcast in Q1 of 2019, and this is comparing patients from Q2 to Q4. And I was at the same practice. I was practicing the same way. I had the same number of patient slots on my template, but my new patients went up from 62 to 76, which is fine. I had a decrease in no-show patients, meaning I had almost 0 patients have an appointment and then not come. And I think part of this is because I had very loyal patients referred by me. And if you're an IVF physician, somebody will talk to you about a conversion ratio, which I don't really love that because I don't think it's super accurate, but it's talking about how many IVF cycles you do for how many new patients you see. And despite seeing more patients, my conversion ratio of IVF went from 27% to 62%. And this is because I had more patients who trusted me. They were committed and they were educated. So they progressed to treatment faster and they had increased compliance. And truly that's goals. That means you can use a social media platform to take better care of your own patients by giving them resources that you create and trust to go to help them along this journey. And if we're not all wanting to do that, then I don't know what we're doing. And this doesn't have to be an individual level. Maybe your practice wants to come together and say, we're going to start a podcast together and we'll divide it up between the doctors and the nurses and we'll have different topics. But that's a great free, and that's a very low hanging fruit resource that you could provide to your patients that's going to educate them with true medical facts. And the very last thing is I asked some patients what they thought about doctors on social media. Extremely helpful and informative, made me more comfortable with my decisions. It has helped me advocate for a doctor that will listen to me and respect me. I think it's great. Knowledge should be as easily accessible to the broad mass as possible. Love it. Makes me better able to choose a provider. Love you guys all educating us. And it humanizes doctors, allows for easier connection, access to accurate info, and it's empowering. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natalie, for such important advice. Now, before we go to our final panelist, don't forget to pop any questions you may have into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. So here we are with the amazing and only embryologist on the panel. Vivian is incredible. She is a senior embryologist at the Reproductive Biology Associates in Atlanta, Georgia. She works with several doctors and clinics to provide the best embryos and help patients with their fertility dreams. Alongside her dedication in the IVF lab, Vivian especially enjoys sipping her morning coffee from her couch while going incognito on various fertility and IVF subreddits on reddit.com to extend her love and knowledge to those who are curious about our microscopic world. And here is the amazing Vivian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Kimble. I am a senior embryologist at Reproductive Biology Associates in Atlanta, Georgia. I am your friendly neighborhood embryologist. I love, as any millennial would, am addicted to social media. Maybe not too addicted, because who has the time these days? It's just a great place for us to nerd out. And of course, that is just actually who I am, a big biology nerd. And what better way than to allow myself to connect to my nerdy side as well as the patient side when it comes to social media. And my favorite platform to use is Reddit, which I don't know if that's a common social media platform for everyone. I like it because I am able to select different subreddits. And lately I have been involved in speaking to other patients who have questions in more of an anonymous platform. So the gist of it is Reddit is a big Ask Anything forum. And the subreddit that I frequent is Ask Embryologists. which is a very small community of embryologists and hopefully a growing community of patients who are curious about their whatever comes to mind IVF. A lot of them are current patients. A lot of them are going through, new cycles or old cycles and want to get feedback from not only their fellow infertile cohorts, but also want to know what's going on inside the lab. We don't see many patients inside the lab, so it's just something that this platform allows them to ask questions and be more comfortable with the people who are handling their gametes. And as anybody else in the mornings before even heading to work or starting their day, I'm sure a lot of us are scrolling on our phones. So that is a big time during my mornings where I am reading my news and I come across Reddit threads and questions that are geared towards what I love, which is my occupation as an embryologist. So I find it very helpful. And I also like to engage with patients, but this is more of a friendly interaction between me and a patient, whether they're my patient or not. If anyone is curious as to what types of facts or conversations, I'm sure you could find the subreddit on your own, through searching through Reddit. There are plenty of fertility forums, and this one is actually specifically for asking embryologists questions. So as any of us can imagine, there is a huge appetite for wanting to know what is happening behind the scenes, behind what we do under our scopes and at our hands on a day-to-day basis, from day 0 to blastocyst. And there's always a desire to know, but there's never any type of platform that a patient can just come on, hop on and say, "Ooh, what is my embryo doing today?" And I feel that having this subreddit with all the questions and all the access to communication between the patient and their embryologist is something of great use. So the great thing about Reddit is the anonymity of everything. You log on, or you don't even have to log on. You can just open up the web browser, reddit.com, and it will have a search engine for you to type in whatever topics you would think. But specifically for our patients, a lot of them in the IVF and fertility field direct each other to the Ask Embryologists subforum, or subreddit is what the Redditors would call it. And the great thing is that you can be a lurker. You don't have to have a registration of any kind or a login name. However, for interactions, whether you're a patient or an embryologist, you would need to make a username, and it could be an anonymous username. It could be one with your name. I've seen a variety. On Reddit, my username or handle is Embryo Babysitter, as seen in my bio. Now, I am also currently a verified embryologist on the subreddit. And as subreddit, again, that is just a smaller forum on this giant website where there are billions of subreddits and forums that other people communicate with and post and share all the things that they want to share, just like on any other social media platform. I often do remind myself that I have to guide those patients, even if we're not face-to-face or on any type of social media platform, that this is something that is personal to them and that it can happen to anybody. Now, in regards to embryology, I do also word my advice in that this is what I've experienced with other patients, or I have seen scenarios such as a completely hatched blastocyst on day 5 and how that is normal and sometimes even more exciting. And I also remember to encourage those patients looking for answers and validation, even if they are feeling negative feelings or thoughts and discouragement. So although there are plenty of other social media platforms, new and old, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, I do think that Reddit, even though it has been out for a long time, is a secret weapon to a lot of social media platforms and the interface between the IVF lab and embryologists with their patients. Now, among all the embryologists that are on this subreddit answering these fun questions, we do have a secret subreddit as well that is purely just for embryologists of all kinds, directors, juniors, seniors, andrologists, and it is an invitation-only subreddit. And I am also a member of that subreddit as well. It is moderated by a couple other embryologists whom I've never met probably, and I hope to meet in the future, but they are wonderful and very impactful as well to the embryology community. Just like Mavs on Facebook or any other platforms that we might be familiar with, this is also another secret weapon and a way to connect with each other alongside helping our patients.
That was phenomenal. I feel like I'm pretty active on social media as a physician, and I've learned so much from this session. We have so much more to talk about. I don't know anything about Reddit, but I have heard a lot about it. My first question for Vivian, because we're getting into questions now, so put them in the Q&A. My first question for Vivian is, do you trash talk IVF doctors on your subreddit, on your secret subreddit?
I've not come across any trash talking. Everybody's pretty respectable. There have been, inquiries about hiring and what's it like to work for a specific clinic and things like that. And I've seen that very little interaction compared to other social media platforms that I'm also involved in. But no trash talking.
Okay.
I'm not guilty of any of that.
Okay. That's good. And we have some amazing questions, but you guys, I don't think we're going to get to all the questions. So I just want you to know, if you are an ASRM member, please join the ASRM Special Interest Group for Social Media. Natalie, what's the best way for people to join that if they're an ASRM member?
The best way is to search for the Facebook group at the current moment. So you can search the Facebook group. It's ASRM. So you do have to have a Facebook. If you don't, you can just message me, but you can probably create one.
Yes. Okay. That'd be great. Please join. If you're an ASRM member, we want you to join the Social Media Special Interest Group. And it's especially for people who are, trying to learn more about social media. So you don't have to be an expert. Our objective is to teach you. And then the other society that I think a couple people mentioned, and Natalie is a founder for, is AHSM, Association for Healthcare in Social Media. Very little money to join. It's a new organization, just a couple years old, but incredible content. So if you're interested in learning more, interested in a little bit or a lot, beginner level or great detail, they are putting out so much good content to help you do better in your social media if that's what you're looking for. So I think Tracey and I are going to alternate in terms of questions.
I'll just say real quick, AHSM does pair with the platforms themselves. So you'll get, hands-on sessions from LinkedIn, from Pinterest, from YouTube, all the different platforms are giving sessions.
That's been amazing.
To help you learn how to create. So joining AHSM is definitely worth it if you want to learn more about how-tos and how to get on platforms.
Yeah, very, very helpful content. Like I just did one, and the person from LinkedIn, they had 2 people from LinkedIn basically telling you how to maximize your presence on LinkedIn. So I wanted to also ask Chris Kincade, because he is a professional brand specialist and marketing, and has expertise in all different industries. What do you think, Chris, about what's going on in the IVF world in terms of social media? You're on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think what's going on in the IVF community in social media is what's going on everywhere. I think the last 15 years has been a story of digital transformation. And I think if you look at traditional advertising, at least in digital, it's been effectively replaced by search engine marketing, search engine optimization, social media marketing, and paid media on social media platforms. And search engine marketing or SEM is almost always more effective than display advertising, 1 in 50 versus 1 in 1,000 click-throughs. plus for this space, SEM is almost certainly a better tool. It allows you to pick the search terms like IVF Clinic Atlanta that are hyper targeted to your needs. SEO is also a powerful tool. That's search engine optimization. That is basically optimizing your web page so that it can be found via organic search. And the best 3 ways to turn up in a user's search is to make the URL, the page title, or the page subhead into a popular search term, which is why a blog can be a user acquisition tool. You want to create URLs for your resources that are SEO friendly, common search terms. So if somebody searches male factor infertility or best practices in frozen embryo transfer, and I'm just kind of making those up, you've got a chance to show up high in the organic search results. And all the presenters here spoke about good ways to use social media marketing to build a following. Giles Palmer, your host, is a great example of this. What he did to boost the Pineapple Warriors conference was recruit a bunch of influencers to speak at his conference, created posts on LinkedIn and elsewhere, and then got his panelists to help promote it. So clever man, Giles. You can also pay to boost your posts. That means you're going to have to figure out what is the lifetime value of your customer versus your customer acquisition cost. And the LTV should be no more than twice the size of your customer acquisition cost. And even if you have a margin business, let's say a customer lifetime value of an IVF customer is $10,000, just for round numbers, and your margin on that is 20%. That you want to take 50% of that $2,000 margin and make that into your target customer acquisition cost. If you then spend $10,000 on marketing and you capture 10 new customers, you've got $100,000 in gross, but you've also created the marketing collateral that you can use for future campaigns. I think there's one really great case that I've seen of really effective marketing in this space, and that's from one of my partners in Vaquera, Ann Watson. She was actually employee number 2 as chief marketing officer at TMRW. She pressed the founders of TMRW to invest in a hero video, and they actually even gave her the budget to put in CGI graphics. And they did it, as she puts it, partly to humor her, but when they played the video at a trade show, everybody, and as she puts it, everybody actually signed up for their demo. That's great marketing because it follows one of our key principles, which is that great brands aren't great because they achieve KPIs, but because they resonate with humans. You've got to tell a really quality story. And she came up with safeguarding the world's most precious cells as the brand purpose, and it helped establish Tomorrow as one of the most exciting disruptors in the IVF space. I think I've hopefully answered that question.
Yes, thank you. I think a lot of people, I'm getting a lot of questions from people who are just saying, specifically, here's a question for Dr. Koo, Dr. Knocked Up. Do you need a physician assistant for all your social media? How do you possibly have enough time? And what about legal issues? And, how do we get started? I think we had a lot of great, you guys need to rewatch this video when it goes up because there were so many great tips from this group. I could not agree more. These were great presentations. But Dr. Koo, how do you handle the time?
I'm going to tell you, I've been so impressed with all our panelists. They are absolute superstars, and they are able to, I don't know how they do it. They have the time, they make the time to really put out great educational content. They put out themselves online. It's amazing. And it's true, like what Laura said, it does take a lot of time, but you can see it's worth it. It's worth it to educate the patient, and it's worth it to get your brand out there. And I got to tell you, all the panelists are amazing at it. So I got to tell you, I get a little help. So I get a little help from my friends. So and so it's absolutely an honor to be able to put stuff out there, but it does take a lot of time. It does require some help.
So
I need.
Yeah, one thing I think that Natalie, like everybody has talked about here, but Natalie especially, and in comparison to like the metrics that Chris is talking about for, say, a big company with a large marketing budget like Tomorrow, Natalie's talking about IVF's conversion rates. So going from new patients to IVF, retention rates. Now, when you recruit a new patient, that's a certain cost in time and money. And if you lose that patient, it's a huge cost in time and money. And if you spend a little time on social media, number one, she and Laura and Roohi and Cindy, actually everybody saves a lot of time counseling their patients. And I think, Lowell, you do this too, by teaching and educating their patients before they even see them, before they even become patients. So patients that come to us through social media already know a lot more than just the person on the street, because you've created content, and that same conversation, you put up a YouTube video, you put up an Instagram story about what is the definition of infertility, or why only single embryo transfer and not a 2 embryo transfer. You've had that conversation 1,000 times. You know how to say that conversation in your sleep. You put it up on social media and your patient has already heard it. It does save time because you're not doing the whole thing over and over again. And your patient already trusts you. She already has bought into the program. So you are saving on the back end with patient retention, conversion rates, decreased cancellation rates, things like that. I think those things, Chris, probably, when I talk to my marketing people, they say it's really hard to put on a spreadsheet and to measure. So we can, but I think on a personal level, everybody on the panel has experienced how much of a return we get from that. So I should stop talking because I'm talking too much. Tracey, pick out some questions. What are some good questions for our panelists? And Dr. Shaheen, I think, has come back to join us. Thank you, Dr. Shaheen.
Hi, yeah, I've got one for Dr. Cindy from Kate LeBlanc. She says, love this whole topic and panel. Thank you. Dr. Duke, we are committed to using language on our website and materials. However, it can be difficult to explain when we do want something to be gender specific. For example, if we have a men's only group, what would be a better way to describe this? Should we say non-birthing partner? We're hesitant to say person without a uterus because this is not a group for people who've had hysterectomy. Dr. Cindy?
Hi, well, so the bigger question is, when you say men, what does that mean? Does that include transgendered men? And if it does, then that makes it a little bit tricky, but you can easily say for patients who identify as male. That's probably the easiest, most umbrella term in that category, without saying non-birthing partner, because it may not necessarily even be someone who has a partner. And so I think that's the language that would be better. And certainly if you were to speak to those who focus on inclusive language, that would be the recommendation there.
Amazing, thank you so much. Now we have one for Dr. Roo. One of our biggest issues on social media is encouraging engagement with our followers who are concerned about privacy. We mainly use Facebook and have started using Instagram. We've tried creating a private group, but this didn't help and we closed it down. Sometimes it feels like we're creating content that no one is interested in or even sees. What's your comment, Dr. Roo?
So engagement truly depends on how you're engaging. Once you put your content out, you can't shut down that app and just be done saying, I put it out there and I'm done. You don't necessarily, it's also not going to a closed group. So if you follow certain hashtags, so for example, TTC is one of the big hashtags in the world of fertility. So if I post, you can do search on Instagram and say TTC and follow and comment and engage there. So they see, oh, Roohi Jeelani MD, when somebody comments and likes, say, oh, who is she? And that attracts them to my page. So that's how I'm engaging. Also engaging with professionals, like all of these doctors, even though I knew most of them outside of social media, just connecting with them via social media has, one, strengthened our friendship, but also we amplify each other's voices. So you get their demographic to then follow you and follow the educational content that you're putting out there. Closed groups make it harder because I think when patients are searching, most patients go because they have a question, right? It's at their fingertips. So they're not going to wait to join a group, get accepted, and then ask a question. So they're going to these Reddit threads or they're going to Natalie's page and saying, did she talk about this? So it's something that they want immediate satisfaction. So how you engage and kind of put your page out there is by doing the same as what you expect to be done on your page. So I think that's important.
Fantastic.
So I have a question here that I think is for Jay. And it's interesting Jay, how would you use or abuse LinkedIn? Can you do a cold call on LinkedIn? Can you connect? And then what happens when they ask you for something? How do you handle that?
Oh my God, I love LinkedIn. I feel like it's the lesser attractive sister in the family of social media and gets neglected, but it is the #1 B2B platform. And so it should never be neglected. And something actually, I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Chen, at an ASRM a couple of years ago, because I post regularly on LinkedIn, and I was saying that so many doctors are on there. Dr. Jamie Griffel from NYU stopped me in the hall. He's like, oh, I love what you're posting on LinkedIn. And Dr. Chen said to me, she's like, you have to understand a lot of these doctors, hence the reason for this webinar, are not on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter, but they are on LinkedIn, again, B2B. And there are so many reasons to use it. There's users are 60% more likely to engage with a coworker than another connection. So engaging on LinkedIn, including liking, commenting, sharing, messaging, can be incredibly powerful there. 30% of a company's engagement on LinkedIn comes from your employees. So you should encourage your employees to be active on LinkedIn. And in terms of cold calling, I have gotten so much business through LinkedIn, through what I post. I tone it down a little bit compared to what I post on Instagram, although not that much if you follow me on LinkedIn. But in terms of cold calling, no, not that much. I know I have a fun reputation, so I'm sticking with it. But the thing I would say, and I also, because I write for Forbes Women, I get so many pitches through LinkedIn. The biggest thing to me is personalize, personalize, personalize. Do not cut and paste a generic message on LinkedIn, because it really can be a powerful tool in both how you post, what you post, how you engage with people, but also those direct messages. Show that you actually know the person, that you follow them, as opposed to, I mean, how many of us, you can raise your hands, have gotten a message through LinkedIn that said, I'm looking to expand my network. No, you're not. Shut up. You cut and pasted that. You don't care about me or your network, you want something. So I do think LinkedIn gets neglected, and it can be not, the way I would say it's abused is just if you're just sending out direct messages without even personalizing it, but it can be a powerful tool, and I highly recommend.
It's very rapidly growing. They've experienced huge growth just with the pandemic, and they are adding all kinds of other tools for engagement. And one of the things we wanted to tell everybody at this webinar is how to improve your online reputation, creating content, the act of creating content. Anything you say online, that means you are creating your own reputation, as opposed to having somebody else rate you, like that one angry patient like 10 years ago that you saw for 5 minutes is giving you bad Yelp reviews. The way to drown out those negative voices is to create your own content. That way you are driving the conversation. And that's what all of us here who have been speaking with you today feel very strongly about. We want everybody to be more active on social media, because we are really physicians and scientists and embryologists, and we do actually know what we're talking about, and we should drown out the crazies on Dr. Google. We should be the ones giving out most of the information about IVF, and yet we're the minority because a lot of healthcare professionals are not on social media. And LinkedIn is a great way, just having, that's your online resume, and because of the SEO and the SEM that LinkedIn does, that like kind of drives your name to the top of the Google search, your LinkedIn profile. So you should really have a nice little LinkedIn profile. It doesn't have to be crazy or extensive, but have a nice LinkedIn profile, because then you do look good on Google, because they are kind of driving that driving those profiles to the top. And that does improve your online reputation without necessarily paying somebody a lot of money to do that for you. Tracey, do you have any questions? Any other questions?
I do. I've got one for Dr. Laura. So it's from someone called Bronte Stone, and information from practice websites can extend that practice's bias or synthesis of information, which can diverge from results of credible peer-reviewed synthesis. The practice's advice may therefore still be misinformation. What is recommended to focus clients and patients on credible industry-verified information? Dr. Laura?
I think we can open it up to anyone, basically.
Yes.
I think Laura is.
I don't know if Laura is available. Can Cindy or Lowell or Roohi?
Natalie?
Well, I guess I can take that. When it comes to the website, I think it is important, speaking of the US at least, there are recommendations and requirements based on SART in terms of what you put out on your website. So you can't put out misleading information, misleading statistics, for example, in terms of, so you're subject to censure or even a fine when it comes to that in terms of your success rates, et cetera. The rest, yes, there isn't great policing. Certainly, as Dr. Natalie hinted at, the misinformation. It's hard for patients sometimes to figure out who a fertility specialist really is. And so certainly we spend time online explaining when we talk about ourselves, who is a reproductive endocrine and infertility specialist. I think we're all very familiar with certain websites of people who claim to be fertility doctors, have claims for things that they've developed and that they say are peer reviewed, but really when you do the search, it's mostly a blog or something where they basically collated a few other small studies without actual evidence, and now that's backing their product. And so it's important for us to call that out when we see it. And I think all of us do our job in terms of reporting things and contacting the necessary people to let them know this is misleading or this is leading to patient harm. But there are limits. At the same time, if it's not something that's known to cause harm, they may have it on their website, but it's really, that's where the honor system comes in.
Yes, and so SART is very important to be aware of. A lot of us work for universities. You know, we have appointments at universities or medical schools, or, you know, we just work for a big corporation. And you do have to be aware that most places like that, most big institutions like that do have very specific rules about social media. Like like every time I do selfies with the residents, I like hear the marketing director in my head. Does everybody agree to be in social media? So I always, the residents are all like, yes, please tag me. So, but yes, that's very important. And we have seen that some of our fellows and residents have reached out to us and said, and created wonderful content and yet been censored by their institution. So, and we're fighting out against that because I think they're creating a lot of wonderful content responsibly. And so they're being censored unnecessarily, but you do have to be aware of those things. There's a question here about HIPAA. I think that's one last question because Giles is waving the white flag at me. And I wanted to go to our ASRM Tech Committee head, Dr. Knocked Up. Talk to us a little bit about HIPAA. People are very nervous about that.
Absolutely. I just also want to say that ASRM has put out those 2 guidelines. You can find them online on how to post properly online and what physicians, especially infertility doctors, should and should not post. Mainly, it just boils down to educate your patient rather than give personal and medical advice, because that's when it starts to slip into a liability issue. If you start to treat patients online who are not really your patients, there is some liability that can arise. So you have to be very careful about walking that thin line of education and not treatment. HIPAA compliance, especially in the United States, is extremely huge. There are a number of little pitfalls you just got to be careful about. For example, if you're just taking a selfie and you happen to have some patient information in the background, that's an issue. Posting baby pictures, you have to get consent. So you really have to make sure that you follow the laws in America to make sure that your patient's information is completely private. And if you want to post baby pictures, you got to get consent. If you have communications with patients, you got to make sure you use a HIPAA compliant software and platform so that you know that it's not going to be hacked and that it has encryption on 2 ends and that it's very safe. Now, some things that are not safe are email, that's hackable. Text messages or SMS, those are also hackable. Those are not encrypted. So you got to be very careful how you communicate with your patients and on what sort of platform. So always remain very HIPAA compliant, be very careful, always be super vigilant. And then if you do post about education, just like everybody said, we need to drive the conversation and put out the proper information so our patients can get the information they need to make good decisions.
Absolutely. That's very good. And one very good, remember, look at those guidelines. ASRM just put them out. We worked very hard on those: electronic communication, social media, and they're up on the ASRM website for everybody. The other, so I think we are getting ready to wrap up. And I really want to take the time to say thank you to everybody for participating in this session. Our panelists, Giles, Palmer, Thomas Elliott, Chris Kincade, our presenters, Dr. Lowell, Dr. Laura Shaheen, Dr. Natalie Crawford, Dr. Roohi Jeelani, Dr. Cindy Duke, Vivian Kimble, our wonderful embryologist, and my phenomenal co-moderator of IVF Babble, Tracey Bambrough. We also are very grateful to the organizers of I3. This has been an incredible platform. This is not our usual content. I know you guys are doing a lot of science, and I've been so impressed with these presentations. Like, I love the ones of IVF in space where everybody dressed up in Star Trek outfits, but you guys are so, it's been great. And we have the phenomenal Jacques Cohen, Peter Naj, Giles Palmer, Thomas Elliott, and Shaista Sadruddin to thank for this amazing platform. And we are seeing they are going to be putting out more and more for us. Mary Ann Civetes is my girl pal in New Jersey, also a huge part of this platform and keeps everything running. And without her, I don't think any of us would actually be on screen now. And today's Q&A team, I also want to say thank you to Shaista, Mary Ann, Anna McLaughlin, and Allison Bartolucci. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't forget anybody. Tracey?
So thank you so much to the incredible Serena H. Chen. You have to tell me what the H stands for.
High maintenance.
But our next session is same time, same place. And it's RBMO Live. Join moderators, Chief Editor Bart Fowler and Editor Laura Rienzi on Tuesday, May 25th for the second episode of RBMO Live, a new webinar series with discussions, presentations, and audience Q&As, highlighting recent publications from the journal. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been amazing having you here, and stay safe.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.